What's up? It's Sam Ekstrom. Welcome to the Squad Show. Since competitive rebuild was taken, Rob Brzezinski needs a phrase to label what exactly he's doing. Top candidates include scrappy retool and cute little teardown.
What's happening? Luke Inman at Luke_Spinman. Vikings also parted ways with their custodian crew. They'll save another $12K in the books as Brzezinski keeps chipping away.
Vikings are in cap hell. Who's to blame? Rob Brzezinski? Sorry, you got to clean it up.
Hey, I'm Luke Braun. Trying out this new show called The Squad Show. Hope everybody likes it.
Skol! It's the Vikings Squad. Everything Minnesota Vikings every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the land of 10,000 lakes. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. It's time to gear up. The Vikings Squad Show starts now.
What's up? Welcome in. Happy Thursday. Welcome to the Vikings Squad Show. It's streaming on Locked On Vikings. Its audio is free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Fired up. You joined us today on a meaty show. I mean, we've got Jonathan Allen release rumors, Jonathan Greenard trade rumors, Kyler Murray signing rumors, and we got to preview the Harrison Smith replacement in free agency if that needs to be a thing. We've got a lot to get to in the next hour. We do this twice a week, talking Vikings with our crew. Again, very glad you joined us today, and please subscribe to the channel. Let's dive right in. It was supposed to be a Jonathan Greenard opening segment. Now it's turned into a Jonathan Allen opening segment. One of the bits we do on this show, it's called Bad Take Anniversary. And today is the 3-day anniversary of when I had this great take on Monday. I think they're bringing back Jonathan Allen. I don't think he's going to be a casualty with 17 million dead to save 6 and then have to replace that. No, they're bringing back Jonathan Allen. So we own our mistakes on this show. Accountability is of the utmost importance. Luke Braun, you're our guest of honor today on the Viking Squad Show. Welcome in. Glad that you could be part of this operation. So I know we're gonna go in on Jonathan Greenard. You did a great episode on that. You've also done now a more recent episode on Jonathan Allen and why this wouldn't be a good idea to eat 17 dead to save $6 million, and now you've opened up 2 holes at defensive tackle.
Yeah, it's really hard for me to make sense of it without accepting some like really damaging premise about the Vikings or about the Wolves or about like where they're headed, right? But I'm not going to hold you accountable for that take, Sam. That's what everybody thought. Everybody thought it was going to be one or the other, Hargrave or Allen, and you could argue, well, one of them's a better pass rusher, one of them's better against the run and played more snaps, and what do you do? But both is a lot. And Jonathan Allen's contract just was not made to be cut right now. That's really where it stands. And Greenard's is a lot the same way. It is not that helpful to get rid of him, and it certainly isn't helpful enough to justify what you're losing. The Vikings were the leaders in pressure generation in 2025. They are losing right now. If they don't get Eric Wilson back and they trade Jonathan Greenard, they would lose 4 of their top 6 pressure generators. They're losing the entire teeth of the defense that was top 5. And it doesn't actually help them that much in the cap. It saves them $6.5 million. It saves them less than cutting Josh Oliver would save them in 2026. And it saves them a lot in 2027. That's true. But if you look at the way that Allen's contract was meant, it was meant to be cut next year. It was meant to be a 2-year deal that was a fake 3-year deal, not a 1-year deal. He has made now $23 million for 1 year of play. If you kept him next year, you only would have paid $6.5 million more. So you would have had $31.5 million for 2 years of play. What sounds like a better deal to you? But to make that happen, you probably have to get the cap hit down. And to get the cap hit down, you have to restructure the contract. To restructure the contract, you need to give them a signing bonus, and that requires the Wilfs to fund it. So my leading theory is that the Wilfs don't want to fund the necessary signing bonuses to get these cap hits down, like with Greenard, like with Jonathan Allen. Sam, I think your whole offseason thing about TJ Hawkinson is way in bounds now, because restructuring that contract requires a signing bonus, and if the Wilfs don't want to pay the bill, then suddenly trading him, cutting him, getting that cap hit down another way becomes the only option. So that's what I really think is going on here, that Will spent $350 million last year. They don't have to spend very much to make sure that the average spending floor thing is satisfied. So they've closed the checkbook, and now the Vikings are letting all the expensive players go, which I'm sure is extremely painful to everybody who's also watching what's happening with the Twins right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're seeing right now, we're seeing the non-core pieces getting slashed. The 30-plus-year-olds, the Joneses, the Hargraves of the world, the Jonathan Allens, and maybe Ryan Kelly coming next. But the question, Spinman, is, was Jonathan Allen good last year? Like, was he a really impactful player on this defensive line? I'm not sure that he was great. I think he played all the games. He was there. He was a body. We walked away from most games saying, wow, Jalen Redmond is unbelievable. We didn't say that a lot about Jonathan Allen. The analytics don't paint a great picture. So was he good? Like, what is the legitimate loss that the Vikings would experience here?
Well, I think it's like Luke said. I mean, was he good for the 18, 19-ish that you were paying him, whatever it was, to almost 20 mil that you were paying him? Probably not. Do you feel like we got our money's worth out of that? Probably not. But, you know, when you talk about trying to bring back or replicate a top 5 defense, you know, this guy had 34 quarterback pressures, as Luke kind of pointed out. That's top 5 on the team. So he definitely moved the needle to a certain extent. And when you're only saving $6 million for a starting defensive tackle that gave you that many quarterback pressures, that just really doesn't move the needle for a lot of people there. When you see this kind of all, you know, put out on paper in the numbers that are in front of us, you still got to bring somebody in. How much does that cost? Probably more than the $6 million that you're going to save. And also, are they going to be an upgrade, or were you doing the 2 steps back, 1 step forward kind of thing? Is it even going to be a net neutral type of player when we compare him to Jonathan Allen, you know, after 2026? Maybe not. So you save the $6 million now, and all of a sudden you got a massive hole on not 1 but 2 of your defensive line spots. And unless they just plan on rolling with, you know, Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins next to Jalen Redmond, maybe a rookie, I just don't think the move justifies the means. And, you know, as much as we're all in this trim the cap down mode right now, which I totally get it. It's that time of year. This is the dark, bleak week before the free agency starts. A lot of these moves happen, but that move specifically just really doesn't make sense. Unless, back to Luke's point, unless you tell me that the Wilfs sat down Rob Brzezinski and said, dude, you got to trim every ounce of fat that you can, because our wallets are still bleeding from what Kwesi did to our bank accounts in 2024 and 2025, which honestly, seeing a move like this, I don't know. Maybe that's not as far-fetched as it is.
Reg, the sum of all of these rumors. So I think in a vacuum, getting rid of Allen, you know, that's one thing. Getting rid of Allen and Hargrave, that's another thing. Getting rid of Allen, Hargrave, and trading Jonathan Greenard, like all of that together suggests you're tearing down your established pass rush, that's why the Vikings could tolerate having nothing at cornerback at times, right? That's how they could tolerate not having a CB3 they could trust and having corners that would play zones, because they had a pass rush. And now in potentially a trio of moves, it could be tearing that down. It's just the in aggregate, all of the speculation, these rumors here don't really add up to what you would think Brian Flores would want at all.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand the vision, you know, like what's going on here. I think, you know, Luke, I think though their points were very valid. I think, to me, this just kind of feels like they feel like, for the value, maybe they just don't think Jonathan Allen is as productive as maybe they like, because, you know, as Luke Braun said, like, it makes sense to just keep him on for another year, but maybe they just don't really think that he's productive enough and they could do better somehow. I don't really know. It seems like they're trying to undo a lot of the moves that Kwesi did. And I feel like last year, especially, the moves that Kwesi made were kind of outside of his character, you know, like he took like a lot of risks on some of these first round, quote unquote, flameouts that maybe didn't get that 5th year, option extended to them. And then he signs them for a 1-year prove it type deal. And, we saw those type of things. And then last year we saw him actually invest in some of these players that were aging, that really kind of went against some of what we've seen him do in his competitive rebuild days. And now it just seems like, to Luke Inman's point, that the Wolves are like, all right, Rob, look, you got to get this thing under control. And I think it kind of leads you to believe, a lot of the fans, they killed Kwesi for his drafts. So they moved Kwesi out of the way, brought Rob in, and maybe they're like, okay, the hope now is to maybe be able to hit on these draft picks, because now we're not going to invest in free agency as we've done in years past. So now it's on the coaching staff to coach these guys up and still make them competitive, because the problem is you're coming off a season where you missed the playoffs, and now you're talking about you're not spending as much money and you're slashing, trying to get the cap down and be compliant. I don't feel like trying to win and slashing to get the cap compliant really mesh together. And that's been the thing, to Luke Braun's point, that we've been dealing with the Twins. They were like, I remember being at spring training a couple years ago and just asking the guys like, yeah, the Twins slashed the payroll, but you guys are still confident that you're a playoff team and you're going to win. And all the players like, yeah, we got the talent. We got, and we saw how it went. By the time the season was over, Correa was gone, and they tore the whole thing down. And so it really doesn't make you understand what the vision is. Maybe we'll understand as time moves on, because we still are talking about them adding a quarterback. And I know we'll get to Kyler in a bit, but maybe trying to add that person is not going to be something that can be expensive, considering some of the moves that they're making. Or maybe they're making moves so that they could maybe afford a medium level contract for a quarterback to bring in to compete with JJ. I don't know. I don't really understand the vision right now.
Yeah, I was just real quick, Sal, I was just going to say, it's one thing, I think, to sit here and kind of pick and prod the Jonathan Allen move, because it only saved you $6 million. You still got to find a replacement, everything we just talked about. But, and also too, to that point, who knows, maybe those internal conversations were more about Flores saying, he didn't live up to the price tag, and maybe he's confident he could get somewhat or close to similar production from somebody else in the rotation, or maybe somebody in free agency that's cheaper. I don't know. That's one thing. But now when we're talking about giving up your team pressure leader, despite how many games did he miss? 5, 6, a third of the games last year, a team captain, and really anybody who sat down and just watched the Vikings defense the past 2 years knows when everybody's healthy, when it's an even slate, Jonathan Greenard is arguably the most important piece to the puzzle. And now you're talking about not paying a couple extra bucks and keeping him around and making the guy happy. That I can't get on board with. Like that, to Reggie's point, sends a very confusing message coming from last year's kind of we're all in Super Bowl type roster, just need the quarterback, to where we're at today. And I know a lot will change over the next couple of weeks, but especially for the compensation that's being kind of flung out, maybe a second and a 4th or 5th round pick, whatever that would look like. For me, it's kind of the same conversation about Jonathan Allen, but just on a bigger scale, with kind of more extreme examples. Sure, you save some money, but you're going to leave a massive hole, and ultimately you're making the team worse in the process, even if it does clear a nice chunk of change. Eventually, there has to be a line with the penny pinching, and for me, and I think a lot of people too, unless you're getting a king's ransom like a 1st and a 3rd or something, that's going to be a really hard pill to swallow if they do in fact move on and trade Jonathan Greenard.
Yeah, and we're going to spend the whole next segment on this. And Braun, you did a great segment about it yesterday, about how this does not need to be a cap issue. There are ways to clear cap. You've already cleared 18 once the Jones and the Hargrave things become official. You've cleared now another 6 with Allen. You can clear 8 with Kelly. If you just do some basic restructuring with, let's say, O'Neal and Jefferson and Hawkinson, there's 30 million more. I'm just using round numbers. It could be more than that. Like there are so many levers to pull to create cap space without trading Jonathan Greenard that it raises so many questions, raises questions about the liquidity of the Wilfs, raises questions about how rogue did Kwesi go that they have to course correct this dramatically. We will get into all of the Jonathan Greenard ripple effects coming up next on the Squad Show.
Hey, it's Matt Derry from the Locked On Lions podcast. The people I love depend on me. If I'm gone, the financial responsibilities don't disappear. I didn't want my family figuring things out during the hardest moment of their lives. That's why I knew only one place to go. I chose life insurance through my friends at Ethos. Ethos makes getting life insurance fast and easy, 100% online. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage. There's no medical exam. You just answer a few simple health questions. You can get up to $3 million in coverage. Some policies are as low as $30 a month. I love the folks at Ethos. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos now by going to ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. In as little as 10 minutes, you can get the free quote and up to $3 million in coverage at ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. That is ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Application times and rates may vary.
Rolling on Vikings Squad Show. Luke Braun, you host Locked On Vikings daily, 30-minute dose, Vikings football. Before we talk Greenard, would you like to talk about what's in the works?
All I want to say right now is that everybody should tune in to the Locked On Vikings YouTube channel for some live content Monday at 10 p.m. Central.
Monday, you say?
Some
Is
late
there
night
tampering happening on Monday?
There should be some news, some late night live content. All will be made.
That is a good tease in the business. Luke Inman, let me tee up with this on Jonathan Greenard. He last year had a great contract, 17th highest edge contract, coming off what some would say was a top 5 season in 2024, number 3 in pressures in the league. Now he's coming off a season where he missed 5 games, could not sack the quarterback to save his life, was still pretty efficient though in the pressures. I do not think he has any leg to stand on to say he's negotiating to be among the Parsons, the Hutchinsons, the Garretts, the Watts, even the Danielle Hunters. I think he is negotiating first and foremost against his teammate, Andrew Van Ginkel, who was given a $23 million number this coming year. He's negotiating against the Greg Rousseaus, the Montez Sweats, the Rashawn Garys. I think he has a real argument to say he should be making $24, $25 million per year. That puts him just outside the top 10. I don't think he has much else argument to say he belongs in that upper tier. I think he can credibly ask for a $5 million raise. Could that possibly be what's standing between the Vikings and retaining what I view as a core piece to this defense and this organization? That seems ludicrous to me if they're not willing to ante that up to his contract demand.
Yeah, well said there. And I don't think anybody's going to argue with that. He definitely ain't on that Parsons level or some of these, kind of blue chip top 5 edge rushers in the league. He's really, really good. We've seen the last 2 years. I know he got dinged up a little bit last year, but ultimately that's how negotiations work, especially in these, sports realms that like, hey, I deserve this top 5, top 10 money. You meet in the middle. I'm with you, Sam. Maybe a 4, 5, 6, maybe a $7 million upgrade, something like that. But I think for the player, trying to put myself in those shoes or position, it's more about getting the upfront money, right? That new signing bonus money, that guaranteed money, not so much about what your salary cap hit looks like year by year. Certainly that goes into effect and plays a little bit of a certain piece of the puzzle, I guess, into the equation. But I think a lot of these players, after 2-3 years, we've seen the salary cap go up so much year by year that the market seems to reset itself every couple of years. And when you're talking about a premium position like edge rusher, if you think you're a top 10, top 12 type dude, and you're getting underpaid. This is just kind of the norm. This every 2-3 years, it feels like these guys, want to justify trying to redo their contract. But ultimately, Sam, I'm with you. If it's $4, $5, $6 million, you got to figure out a way to get that done and keep. Rob Brzezinski said we're trimming some fat, but we're going to try to keep our core guys while keeping the future in mind. Jonathan Greenard, without a doubt, is a core guy. So you do everything that you can, up to a certain extent, right? But you do everything that you can to keep this guy around the next 3-4 years.
And Reg, it's not, yes, Dallas Turner's waiting in the wings. Yes, it would mean a bigger role for him. You still need 3 edges, maybe 4, to have a real rotation at pass rush. It's not simply, well, Dallas Turner can fill in. That's not, number one, he's not as good as Jonathan Greenard, and it's not even close at this point. Number 2, you still would need to backfill in some way. Like, I think there's so many holes to poke at this. His talent notwithstanding, Jonathan Greenard is still really good.
Yeah, and I kind of want to call attention to Javon Hargrave's Twitter. Some guy said if you're a DL and want to get to the QB, Brian Flores' system is not for you, and Hargrave retweeted that. And so that ended up leading to this conversation. And so
I got 100 pressures from the okay.
Look, okay, this is what he said, okay? Look, Kevin Seifert from ESPN said, this is not a new critique. In a 2023 story, Harrison Phillips talked about the role of a defensive lineman in Flores' system. Essentially said it was you had to move the offensive lineman, jump the gaps to draw the lineman with them and open up for the linebackers who rush and edge players looping inside. And so you did kind of see some of the guys along the front, kind of suffer in terms of numbers so that the guys outside can eat. Van Ginkel, jumping those passes, and Greenard getting to the quarterback. We saw Dallas Turner flash a little bit last year. And so it's interesting to hear those things, especially considering they felt like Harrison Phillips was expendable last year and let him go. I feel like having him in the room would be helpful to their efforts, considering all the slashing that they're doing. And so I think what's interesting is now you potentially think about exiting Jonathan Greenard, who he probably has double-digit sacks last season if he did not miss and whiff on so many sacks. And I know he was super, super, super down about those because we talked to him about it in the locker room after several games where it happened, point blank range and just not being able to get the quarterback down. But he is still one of the best pass rushers in the league. And I think, losing him would be a bitter pill to that Brian Flores defense, especially with the talk on X now about how, he needs the 3-down lineman to create for the edge guys to get home.
Matthew Collar chimed in, added to that conversation, which Javon Hargrave reposted Collar.
Yep.
So Collar says, talked with Phillips in 2024 as it related to PFF grades. He said D linemen are asked to move O linemen or jump gaps to draw the linemen with them to open up for LBs rushing or edge players looping inside. Doesn't grade well because there's no pass rush win, but it works. So that insinuates that the interior is used as a prop for the stunts that they like to run. But Jalen Redmond still found a way to get to the passer. Just saying. Braun, thoughts?
Yeah, there are 3 different interior defensive linemen. 2 of them have been cut that were over 30 pressures on the season in 2025. I think the Vikings might be the only team that can say that. It was Redmond, Allen, and Hargrave. So they get theirs. There's a lot of crashing. There's a lot of dirty work you got to do. That's going to be true on a lot of Ds, especially for a nose tackle like Harrison Phillips. You're the big guy. You go get a double team and then you win because they spent 2 players on your one. But again, this is the best pressure generating defense in the league. So, I mean, at best, I can only interpret this as complaining about having to be a team player. I don't think it's a good look at all.
Did the Vikings perhaps, and this is probably behind like the money of it all. Did the Vikings perhaps look in the mirror and Brian Flores said, we overcompensated. We actually have to stop the run. It's actually kind of important. They're actually going to pivot back to the value signings of 2024 who were not effective at rushing the passer, but by golly, they stopped the run. Is that the direction that we're headed back to? And then Jalen Redmond just rushes the passer for everybody.
Yeah, he'll fix it.
Bring
what about
back
secondary?
Bring back
We're
Jonathan
not going to have
Bullard.
this pass rush anymore. Are we still going to patch this together with a bunch of cast-offs and like 45-year-olds at cornerback?
I got to be honest, man. Looking at and we've talked a lot about their needs going into the draft and free agency for the amount of cap hell that they are in. They sure do have a lot of holes on this roster. It's kind of crazy. Like to sit here and have to shave all this money and talk about losing guys like Jonathan Allen, maybe a guy like Jonathan Greenard, and still have all these other holes at safety and corner and a backup linebacker and, a run stuffing, defensive tackle. And we haven't even talked about the offense yet. It's wild how we got here after, 2 crazy off seasons.
Braun, what do you think is the resolution with Greenard? Can you put the cat back in the bag here and just shake hands and extend him and give him a modest raise, or is this the end?
Man, I hope they can figure something out. I really do. I don't know Jonathan Greenard. It really kind of depends on just where his head's at. Because when you find out that your team is shopping you, that is a tough bridge to unburn. That does feel bad. So you got to manage that relationship, assuming you even want to get the contract done or figure it out, right? You still got people talking about how, well, yeah, but they got to get under the cap and it's a cap issue, but it's a cash issue. And those are very different things. Somebody's got to be willing to pay more money to Jonathan Greenard, to a player. This is very similar to like what fractured their relationship with Danielle Hunter back in 2020 or whatever it was, when he justifiably wanted a market correction. Jonathan Greenard is deeply underpaid. That is inarguable. He is making less money than he should make based on what his peers make, what edge rushers who are worse than him make, which is significantly more. That is something that he is right to want to correct. And if you are unwilling to do that and you're going to trade him away instead, even if you're going to say that, even if you change your mind later and you go, you know what? Yeah, you're right. We'll get this down. Well, now he might want to say, hey, screw you guys. Yeah, as for more money and you said get out of here. You had me play through a shoulder injury and I re-aggravated it and I need surgery. And now you don't want to pay me what I'm worth? If I'm Jonathan Greenard, I'm well within my rights to say, F you guys. No, now definitely trade me. I'm out of here.
The Vikings would then go into next season with Dallas Turner as your number 2, Van Ginkel in a contract year, and nobody else. Am I forgetting someone? Bo Richter? Who am I forgetting? Tyler Batty? You would have 2 edges.
Bo Richter, yeah, Air Force. Next up.
Oh.
Next in line.
Yeah.
They're going to draft a guy.
It's a huge draft need, even without even if you think Dallas Turner can step up, take another step, be the Jonathan Greenard and be the premier edge rusher on the team. Even if you're that optimistic about him, Van Ginkel's 30 and hurt all the time. It's a draft need.
And maybe they get 2 picks for Jonathan Greenard. Maybe it's a day 2 and an early day 3. Suddenly you're talking about 11 picks in this draft. And this feels like, to me, and I want to touch more on this, this feels like a huge course correction by Rob Brzezinski in alignment with ownership that I would be surprised if Kwesi were taking this same path. Now, maybe ownership sits down with him and has the same conversation, but was this really the play? Like, Kwesi opens up this, what I would have called a 2-year window with kind of this older core, bunch of free agent guys. I don't think Kwesi is parting ways with Jonathan Greenard, who he signed, Jonathan Allen, who he signed. I feel like this is a very different path than we would have experienced with Kwesi. Does anybody disagree?
I kind of disagree. I think I don't think Kwesi would have had a lot of power to change this because I think it's about ownership.
This would be the first time, Reggie, that we've ever questioned the Wilfs' willingness to spend. Never happened. Never happened.
Yeah, and you kind of wonder like what's going on, like why is that? And it is interesting though, like that it sets up Quasi to just kind of be the continual fall guy for everything, but like a total 180 flip from last year and even the season before. I do understand now they have all these cap constraints that they have to get underneath, by the start of the league year. I get that, but it is just kind of interesting. Also, too, like Brzezinski has long been known as the numbers guy, and he's been here all along. So, like this notion that it was just Quasi made all these deals and Brzezinski didn't have anything to do with it. Like I'm sure he worked with Rob on structure of some of these deals, and now Rob is just he's getting called upon to fix the ills of what Quasi has done over the last several years. I think that's a little dense, maybe, to think that way. But I think regardless of that, this is now a mess that Rob is going to clean up, and he doesn't even know if he's going to get the job full time.
It's like you go out to Manny's Steakhouse, you got a great meal, you did the a la carte, you got all the sides, you maybe have a cocktail, and then even dessert. The bill comes at the end. I feel like the Wilfs and Brzezinski kind of had this conversation, like, we got to pay this bill, man. We got to course correct, like you mentioned, Sam. And even if it's to the detriment of 2026 and the roster and the team building, we got to make some tough choices. We got to clear this money. But I still think at the end of the day, and this goes back to Greenard, I still think at the end of the day, they're going to try to keep this core intact. And obviously, Jonathan Greenard is a big part of that core. We'll see. Again, maybe there's more behind the scenes than the information that we know. But I'm going to have a really hard time. Again, Jonathan Allen, Hargraves, Aaron Jones, those are one thing. That's one layer. But I'm going to have a hard time getting on board if they do move on from Jonathan Greenard. Because, again, that sends a whole different message. Luke, I think you referred to the Polads and the Twins. I mean, sensitive subject.
Beat the allegations, Ziggy.
Dude, like, that is such a – for the Wilfs being known for such great owners and being always willing to spend money and be competitive and things like that. It's such a 90-degree turn, such a 180, it feels like, from what we've seen since they've been around since 2004, whatever it is. So
yeah,
it's just hard to kind of wrap my head around. And again, the polar extreme coming from 2025 offseason saying this is Super Bowl ready. I mean, you got ESPN experts saying the Vikings are a Super Bowl roster. I mean, there's a lot of hype. Just had to figure out the quarterback position to where we're at now. Talking about, are we going to trade Jonathan Greenard because we're not going to pay him another $5-6 million? We'll see. Again, I think Luke pointed it out. Like, this is always the worst week of the year. You only lose people at this point. Things will look a little bit different, a little bit brighter by the time free agency starts. But even free agency, I mean, if we're going off what they've given us, they're going to be pretty quiet in free agency too.
Yeah. You know what I'm picturing right now, Luke? Rest in peace, Rob Reiner. He storms in the room in Wolf of Wall Street, and imagine that
$26,000 in sides, Jordan?
$26,000 worth of sides? That's what I'm picturing right now. Mark Wilf had that conversation with somebody. His name is Quasi. So we've spent half an hour plus on two Jonathans that are going to be cut. Haven't even talked about the Kyler Murray steam. That's going to be next. And I'm going to attempt to paint a rosy picture about this and be sympathetic to Kyler Murray's last 7 years in Arizona. That's next. We are brought to you today by Betterhelp. March is a time to celebrate women, especially around International Women's Day, and to recognize just how much they carry, whether it's work, it's relationship, it's families, it's logistics, it's planning. It's all of those combined. They step into so many roles every single day. I know my partner does. She's got so much strength, so much on her mind. She's so proactive. It's really impressive to watch. And when we are holding all of those burdens, those pressures, therapy can help with that, helps create balance, helps set healthy boundaries, and support your overall well-being. So with BetterHelp, with over 30,000 licensed therapists, more than 6 million people served worldwide, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, and it works. Fill out a short questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, and if it's not the right fit, go ahead and switch at any time. Your emotional well-being matters. Find support, feel lighter in therapy. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's betterhelp.com/lockedon. Kyler Murray is going to be cut, and he could be coming to the Minnesota Vikings for the very, very cheap price of $1.3 million. That's the going number, it seems like, a minimum salary to be your new Vikings quarterback. Another great take anniversary on my part. I pretty well, and I think anybody who was on the show that day, pretty well kiboshed this, right? Inman, you were there, I think.
Yep. I was on the Geno train. For if it's head to head, we got to pick one. I was all about Geno over Kyler. Yep. I'll take the L.
There's been, since it's been reported he's going to get cut, I think there's been kind of a surge of sympathy for man, it wasn't really Kyler's fault in Arizona. That goes against my instincts. We're planning to be okay with this when it inevitably happens. So I'm going to do my best, take my best shot. Just like with Geno, I'm just going to Control-Alt-Delete on 2025. Going to pretend that season didn't happen. Bye-bye. And I'm just going to look at 2024, which was a full 17-game slate where he rushed for 40-plus yards on 7 different occasions. Okay. His career sack rate, it's around 5 or 6%. That's very good. It would be very fun to have a quarterback that didn't get sacked at a league high rate. That would be awesome. Only threw an interception in 8 different games. That's less than half. Took care of the ball pretty well. At one point was 6-4 with only 3 interceptions thrown that season and 100-plus passer rating. The Cardinals defense has ranked 32nd, 13th, 11th, 21st, 25th, 21st, and 27th in his 7 years in Arizona. I think he's a playmaker. I think that there's some fun upside potential with Kyler Murray. Luke Braun, where are you at with this potential move?
I feel like I'm reading too much into the reports, or I'm just too exposed to the reports, because it feels almost foregone that everybody has cited the Vikings as, the number one destination for all the QBs. All the QBs want to play for the Vikings. That was the huge report at the Combine, came from a bunch of people. And now Kevin Seifert and a bunch of other people are reporting that the Vikings are really into Kyler Murray. And that's their number one. So both of these guys are each other's number one destination. How can it not happen? And the only reason I could think of is Kyler not wanting to be told, and by the way, you're competing with JJ McCarthy, which would be fair. But maybe he takes that and he says, well, that's fine. I'll beat him. Just like Daniel Jones beat Anthony Richardson. That's kind of where I feel on that. In terms of how I feel about Kyler Murray as Vikings quarterback, I talked to Alex Clancy on Locked On Cardinals a few weeks ago about this idea. And we talked about it in the context of a trade where you'd be picking up parts of that contract. Without that contract, and it's just vet minimum, it's a different proposition. But the fact remains that it felt like Kyler Murray was at his best. Quick strike, throwing outside the numbers, spreading things out, being more like a horizontal game, and then adding your read option and your scrambles and your run to that. And that doesn't feel like the way Kevin O'Connell wants to operate. But if the Vikings see Kyler Murray as their number one option, that means Kevin O'Connell sees Kyler Murray as the number one option. Nobody else is making that decision. So I guess I'm just wrong about what Kevin O'Connell wants. And if he wants that, he can get it. So I would definitely give it a God's honest chance and then go back into some Kyler Murray film and try to get a more detailed analysis of what I would expect from him at this point in his career. Because it's been a while since that 2021 explosion. And I do think that he has grown worse as a passer, innately, in ways that have nothing to do with what was going on around him in Arizona. And I want to check in on that take and make sure that that's really the case, and that the perception about supporting cast versus what Kyler Murray himself is doing is actually the truth. And that's work that I would take quite a bit of time on and would probably come out well after he signs.
Yeah, not too much to add there. I was just going to say, the Wilfs are on board. I mean, we just spent the first 30 minutes talking about the Wilfs are in penny pinch mode, and now you got the opportunity to go get, a former number one overall pick for pennies. on the dollar. I mean, that opportunity just doesn't come around very often. And even though I'm with Bront, like maybe I just got to go back and rewatch some Kyler over the last year or two. I'm kind of having a hard time connecting the dots with KOC and his system specifically, and what we know he's going to, want and ask from his quarterback, what he's going to prioritize, and I guess how that all kind of matches up with Kyler's skill set and what he does well, vice versa. But I still think the idea of bringing in to your point, Sam, a very high floor quarterback with all those athletic traits, all that mobility, all that just overall talent that got him drafted number 1 overall, and pay him virtually nothing. While at the same time, too, giving J.J. McCarthy some time to marinate for another year, I guess, if that's their game plan or what they want to do with this quote-unquote quarterback competition. Obviously, you bring in Kyler, it's not going to be much of a competition. But, you throw all that in the pot, it's awfully enticing, especially when you think about, the other options out there. What are the other options then if we don't get Kyler? Trading picks for Mac Jones, they're not going to do that. The Aaron Rodgers spinning those wheels, probably not going to do that. Bringing a much lower ceiling type of guy like, Jimmy Garoppolo got flung out at one point on this show. I just think Kyler gives you the best chance to win from both on the field upside with these weapons and KOC calling the shots, but also from a team building position too, knowing you're going to have, I guess in your quarterback room, you could say you got 2 first-round top 10, quarterback picks in that quarterback room that you're paying, a vet minimum, and then McCarthy's rookie deal too. So pretty much paying peanuts compared to the rest of the league when you look at those quarterback rooms. So in that aspect as well, from a team building, roster management, salary cap, all that stuff, I also think it's the best option as well.
He's been the butt of so many jokes, Reggie, right? Like, oh, he's short. There's already been the memes of how short Kyler Murray is. He's part of the organization that gets F-minuses in the NFLPA survey, the Call of Duty stuff, right?
He's voting for those.
Yeah.
He's one of the players giving him that.
He had a coach, Jonathan Gannon, who was kind of the butt of jokes and said silly things. Like, it's hard to escape. It's hard to escape when you're mired in that. And he hasn't done a lot to climb out of it. And the injuries have caught up to him as well. And he's had bad defenses. Some of it's not his fault. Some of it's out of his control. Some of it probably is his fault. It's very hard to separate the player from all the narratives.
Yeah, and I call back to Kyle Brandt had a rant on NFL Network saying that, all the stuff about, he doesn't study, he had the gaming clause in his contract, and all that stuff was actually, 4 years ago now. And people just don't want to forget about that or still want to, hold him to that. And he had a great season in 2024 that he's kind of, it really hasn't allowed for his maturity or for his growth continuing to go with those narratives about him and his style of play. Here's my thing on Kyler. His body just never seems to hold up over the course of a season. And when you're talking about a guy that you're already nervous about with J.J. McCarthy, about his body holding up over the course of a season, and you bring in another guy like that, granted, a dynamic player, improvisational skills out of this world, who knows what it looks like after that foot injury. Kind of had some conflicting reports last season about that foot injury with Kyler in Arizona. But if he's the guy that we've seen, and you just want to maybe provide some more structure around him, and you think, okay, the structure, a better organization could lead to more success for him, okay, cool. But to Luke Braun's point, I kind of don't really see the fit. And I think I've been banging the table. Well, banging the table is kind of strong, but I've been a proponent of bringing Geno Smith in just because I feel like how Kevin O'Connell wants to run the offense, Geno fits that bill. Okay, humor me here. Kyler Murray is not Josh Dobbs, okay? Full stop. And I know I'm not trying to draw comparisons that way, but I will call back to when he did have Josh Dobbs, and I feel like once Josh Dobbs was kind of learning KO's system a little bit more, and KO kind of wanted him to do some of the things that he likes, quarterbacks to do, that's when he just lost his effectiveness. I feel like when he didn't know the offense that much and he was just out there, running around, making guys miss, doing his thing, like he was really sensational over, a couple weeks span. And I feel like that's not necessarily how KO wants his quarterbacks to run. He wants them to have a little bit more structure. And, maybe if Kyler breaks out of the pocket and makes some things happen, that's helpful. But I think he wants guys who can drop back, deliver the ball to the playmakers, push the ball down the field. He loves the vertical passing game. And I'm not sure that Kyler is the guy that necessarily fits that bill. And I'm all for coaches evolving, and maybe, him getting a mobile quarterback to that extent is something new that will be an exciting challenge for him to kind of marry Kyler's style with his style. But I just don't know that necessarily is, from what we've seen from KO's tenure in Minnesota, the kind of quarterback that fits what he wants to do offensively. Also, I've been watching a lot of these like programs lately, whether it be NFL Live or, things on NFL Network. I don't understand where the narrative is coming from. I mean, it's coming from somewhere. If it's coming from the Vikings organization, we don't necessarily know. But I feel like I was listening to NFL Live yesterday, and Booger McFarland was like, yeah, they want to get somebody in there because they don't have any confidence in JJ McCarthy anymore. And like this narrative has been that the Vikings are just down on JJ. They've given up on him. They want to move on from him. And I don't really know where that narrative is coming from, because I still feel like the organization still wants to see what they can get out of JJ and wants to see him, take the reins and compete and win the competition and be the guy that they've drafted him to be. But I mean, from all these reports that we keep hearing, even going back to like Super Bowl week, you think the Vikings hate the guy.
Well, Kyler has played 11, 5, 8, and 17 games in his last 4 seasons, in the wrong order there. But there's a very good chance that if you have Kyler Murray as your quarterback, you're also going to see JJ McCarthy too at some point. We do have the potential Jonathan Greenard replacement, and we will smash the breaking news sounder to deliver that to you after a super quick pause.
Thank you, Sam. For the first time in 15 years, Cameron Jordan will hit free agency. He's not going to return to the Saints. How about a little Steve Jordan legacy, feel good in a loss in a season that feels like they're dumping it to try to go into a full scale rebuild right now? How about something to feel good about? Bring Steve Jordan back in and take a nice picture at halftime.
How many vet minimums can they dole out from cut dudes? Is Cam Jordan getting cut, or was he a free agent?
I think he's. I actually.
I assume that he got cut. If this is breaking news.
No, contract expiring naturally.
Oh,
still,
and they're not going to. Okay. Yeah. Sure. Cool.
Sure. So, yeah, I'm in.
This is to me like when I wanted Larry Fitzgerald at the end of his career. I don't care if he's good. I just want the feel goods.
Any other sons of legends that could make an appearance? What's Duron Carter doing?
CFL legend.
Thaddeus Moss, I know, is not on an NFL.
Thaddeus Moss, man.
All right, let's get to Luke Inman's prospect of the day. And then, sorry, click the wrong button. Let's get to the prospect of the day for real.
Yeah, we have not talked. I'm looking at our list here. We have not talked about a linebacker yet, so I figured we'd dip our toes in that pond today. Pretty intrigued with this linebacker class. I think there's a lot of fun athletes, a lot of guys that are going to come in and contribute right away. These kind of first 2 tiers. When I say 2 tiers, if you watch the combine, it's pretty much Sonny Styles from Ohio State. He's definitely going to go in the top 10, maybe even top 5. And then kind of this second tier of guys I've seen. We had Forno on Monday, Sam, and he dropped a mock draft that morning, and I pulled it up. He had CJ Allen from Georgia going to the Vikes at 18, which I will say this just real quick about CJ Allen from Georgia. Outside of Sonny Styles, he's probably the guy who's best at getting downhill, run defending, blitzing type of linebacker. Obviously, that matches up with the Flores system quite a bit. But looking more in this kind of second, third round, I think there's a lot of great options out there. I know Alec Lewis, I think he had us mocked with the Pittsburgh cat, Kyle Lewis from Pittsburgh. I think early day 3, he's kind of that hybrid box safety linebacker. Again, I think Flores would definitely get his money's worth out of him right now. But the guy I'm honing in on right now, the guy I'm kind of dialed in on in that kind of 40 to 60 range, kind of hard after the combine to I guess project where some of these linebackers are going to go, but 40 to 60 range right now, where the Vikings are obviously smack dab in the middle at pick 49 picking, is the Cincinnati kid, Jake Golday. And what really intrigues me about him, first of all, really good athlete, super explosive, 6'4", 240, but he's a former defensive end moved linebacker. And I think when you watch him, you can just really see, the true kind of natural pass rusher that he is. He's coming in day 1, I think, with legitimate kind of pass rushing chops in his bag of tricks. And I think there's a big difference, when we talk about, blitzing linebackers, that, hey, you just got to beat this running back on third down in the backfield, versus a true pass rusher that can pose a threat, not just, against a running back or matched up against a tight end, but against an offensive tackle on some downs as well. I think Golday really brings that to the table. And that's I think where I see this nice extra value out of him, because that's a guy, offensive lineman, kind of got to keep in the back of their mind every snap, and they got to be prepared about him. And he's a linebacker, but again, he's a guy that can rush the passer as kind of a more traditional edge. This morning I pulled up PFF snap count. I mean, he was hand in the dirt guy, one in every about 6.5 snaps. He had his hand in the dirt. So again, it's just because he's got those natural pass rushing traits, 10.5 career sacks, 25.5 career tackles for loss, had at least 5.5 tackles for loss every single season at Cincinnati. Elite run defensive grade per PFF last year, 90.6, 19th in the country with 19 coverage stops. But again, I think you're getting your money's worth out of him when he's at or near the line of scrimmage. I think just in general, kind of the value of linebacker too has kind of dissipated a little bit the last 4, 5, 6 years, where you're talking about those kind of old school, true traditional stand-up linebackers anyways. But I think getting a guy like Jake Golday, second round, pick 49, let's just say, out of Cincinnati, that offers real pass rushing upside, on top of being a really good athlete with good, recognition skills and all that. I think for me, that just goes a long way to justifying taking a linebacker, which seems early in the second round, but a linebacker at pick 49, because they need to inject some youth into that position, and some real talent behind Cashman, and hopefully Eric Wilson they bring back as well. But that's the guy I'm kind of dialed into right now, but kind of a fun little group of these linebackers in these first 3 rounds that are pretty intriguing, Sam.
3 years Central Arkansas, 2 years Cincinnati,
yeah.
Turning
so 24
to.
Well, I think he's 23.7 PFF had him at, so probably 24 by the time the season starts. I could be wrong on that, though, Sam. Maybe you got
22.7.
Oh,
22. His current age.
So a little bit older. We know Flores doesn't like the super young, raw 20-year-olds coming out. So a little bit older, 5 years experience. Obviously, Flores maybe would appreciate that and check that box, too.
Ran a 4.62. Not too bad. Jumped 39 inches, 10.5 broad.
Yep.
Pretty good combine.
Yeah.
Jake Golday. I like it. And like looking back at your prospects of the day, Inman, I mean, you talked about the holes this team has, right? I mean, Mansur, Delane, Traden Stukes, cornerback, big hole. Caden McDonald, Grayson Halton, defensive tackle, turning into a huge hole.
Mm-hmm.
Center, Jake Slaughter, hole. Safety, Dylan Thieneman, hole. Like Emmett Johnson, running back, hole. All of your prospects of the day would fill a pretty gaping need on this team. And the picks are limited, right? I think they have 1 pick in each of the first 3 rounds, and then do they double up in the 4th round or 5th round? You're not going to be able to address all these needs. You're going to have to figure some of this out in free agency coming up here shortly, which leads me to the safety position. Harrison Smith has not made an announcement yet. let's assume he's gone. Who can you sign? Who can you sign to be a veteran presence at safety and replace the hitman? Reggie, do you have a name for us or an idea?
So I feel like what you're getting from him is irreplaceable, and a guy who knows Flo's system like super well. But I'll give two. Well, okay, three. Well, no, two guys, just because the third I feel like you may not be able to get for price numbers. But Kevin Byard, already in the division, and Jimmy Ward. I feel like Jimmy Ward could be someone who could come in. He's a veteran and could play well in the system. And Kevin Byard's a vet, and he's a ball hawk still, even at his age. So I don't know. Maybe one of those two guys could give you something, but I think it's hard to replace what Harry is giving you.
Braun?
Yeah, if this was like 3-4 years ago, Kyle Duggar, Jimmy Ward, Kevin Byard, I'm liking that. Some of these guys are getting a little long in the tooth. I'm with you though, Reggie. If you think Kevin Byard's got some more gas in the tank, 32 and a half years old, I'm still intrigued about him. I don't know if you want to replace, a 36-year-old Harrison Smith with a going on 33-year-old safety, but I mean, at the end of the day, though, Reg, you're right. Like the dude balled out last year, so he's definitely a deep safety ball hawk for sure. I still think they need more help so you can free up Josh Metellus into that joker kind of everything wild card role. But he would definitely be one step to the puzzle for sure that I'd be intrigued about. Definitely.
It's so hard I think to Luke Brown's point, they have a cash problem right now as what's happening with the org right now. So it's hard to forecast like who they would bring in. I feel like it would only be like a stopgap type replacement, and maybe they try to draft a guy to be the long-term replacement, but Kevin Byard certainly would fit the bill. I just don't know how much he would cost.
Yeah, it's really hard to project what the Vikings will do in free agency because we don't really know what mentality they have because we don't know who's in charge. Like not having a GM makes it so chaotic that like, are they thinking short term? Are they thinking long term? Who knows? The guy who's going to be making this decision in 4 months is not in the chair right now, unless it's Brzezinski, who doesn't even know if he wants the job. So like, this is this super difficult thing to parse out. I like the Kyle Duggar idea though, not necessarily because, you need to get a cheap guy or it's an old veteran or any. It's a guy Flores likes, and it might not be any deeper than that. We know Flores likes that guy, and we know he's going to essentially get to be judge, jury, and executioner on that. It might not be about short-term, long-term. It might be, hey, get me my dude that I like. And nobody's going to tell him no, especially after he put up with all these cuts on his pass rush. So I think they're going to owe him that after giving him this huge contract and then gutting his pass rush. So I could see it that way.
I was just to add on to that, and kind of the theme of today's episode and conversation, there might be a world, and I know people don't want to hear this, but they just roll with Josh Metellus, Theo Jackson, and Jay Ward. They draft a rookie, who knows? And I know Dylan Thieneman and Emmanuel McNeil Warren are being mocked, around that range. Maybe they pull the trigger on a first round guy, but there is a reality where they just roll with those three guys. They bring in another kind of special teams type of safety, like a Tavier Thomas again, and they compete and they let those three guys or, whatever, that group of five guys duke it out and may the best three-man win. We might see a lot less three safety looks as well next year because of this personnel change too. So as enticing as some of these guys are, Duggar, would love him, obviously. Jimmy Ward, he was a baller back in the day. Don't know about him the last year or two health-wise. But I just know, given what we've already started to see, the seeds have kind of been planted, it feels like, with the approach that the Wilfs are kind of making Brzezinski kind of go forward with, and it starts with clearing up a lot of this cap. So in turn, I just don't think they're going to spend a lot of money in free agency. That's all.
What do we think about Kobe Bryant?
Yeah. I mean,
I didn't bring him up because I feel like he's going to price out.
Loved his fadeaway.
Not that one.
I don't think he's
going
to price out too bad.
You don't think so?
I don't think he'll price out too bad. Safeties never get paid as much as we think.
Yeah, I'd like either of the Seattle secondary dudes. Woolen, I don't know how much he's going to price out. I think we talked about him on Monday, Sam, or Kobe Bryant for sure. I'd take either one of them. Or they don't do anything, and maybe they just pull the trigger on one of these two safeties at pick 18. You know,
I've got two high enders. Two high enders I like. Cam Curl,
that'd be a coup.
Washington, and then LA. Keeps narrowly missing KOC in his stops around the NFL. Cam Curl would be really good. And also, Kyler Murray needs a friend. Jalen Thompson. Bring Jalen Thompson over from Arizona as well, 5-year starter. Both of them, Curl and Thompson, super physical in the run game, which is a trait that I think could translate well to doing some of the safety things that Brian Flores wants to do. You got to improve your tackling, whether it's at defensive tackle with these changes they're making, your perimeter run force. You gotta tackle better than the Vikings did last year. And if you want to compete and try and get yourself in the mix in this division, you're going to have to stop the run a little bit, because they blew like 4 games last year because they couldn't stop mediocre running backs. That's where we end today on the Vikings.
I have one more thing, Sam.
And Luke
I have some reporting to share.
Should I smash the sound? Let me smash the sound.
Go for it.
Why not?
It's some reporting from elsewhere in the Locked On Network, Corbin Smith, with the Jonathan Greenard thing that it was yesterday, but I just saw it, which is that there are like half the league is interested in Jonathan Greenard, tons and tons of callbacks on that call out for a trade, and that he thinks the sweet spot for compensation is a 2nd and a day 3 pick. So I wanted to ask Luke, with your prospect of the day.
Yeah.
If they trade Greenard for a 2nd and then say like a 5th or 6th or something, and then they use that 2nd to draft your guy out of Cincinnati, and they save the money and they do whatever else they do, how do you feel about that?
I still think we're taking 1 step forward, 2 steps back. I mean, Greenard, you're getting a in his prime, right? I mean, how old is he? 27, 28? In his prime, peak, polished dude. The only thing that I feel like, and again, I like Jake Golday for sure. But in as far as like trying to compensate for the loss of Jonathan Greenard, those are such huge shoes to fill. And I would still like the front 7 with Dallas Turner and Van Gink, and then Golday, and then Cashman, and obviously, hopefully, a guy like Eric Wilson. But that's to replace a guy like Jonathan Greenard, just apples to apples, is going to be really hard to do, even if you use the 18th overall pick on a edge rusher. I just don't think you're going to get somebody that's going to come in and be that kind of just pro ready and polished that you're getting Jonathan Greenard in 2026 when week 1 rolls around. So that would be tough for me. And that's why it feels like this whole kind of game plan of just like shedding these contracts, maybe moving on from some veterans for some draft picks. And then even if you hit on the draft picks, I'm not sure how much better of a team we really are, but that's the position that we're in. And it feels like that's the position that we're kind of headed. We'll know a lot more in the next week or so once free agency starts. But that's kind of my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, we could have clarification on Greenard's future by our next show. Vikings Squad Show returns on Monday. We're so glad you watched, listened, commented, and subscribed today. Again, that's Monday night, Luke Braun. Check out some live content.
Monday night, 10 p.m. Central.
10 p.m. Central, and that'll be live. Make sure you tune in. I'm Sam Ekstrom. Those are the Lukes. That's Reggie Wilson. Appreciate it, and talk to you next time.